Welcome to the Design Imposter Podcast, the show where we explore the enigmatic world of imposter syndrome through the lens of design, community, and empowerment. I'm Monique Jenkins.
And I'm Jessica Valis. We're your co-hosts of the show and the founders of the Creative Circle Collective, a design agency that strengthens community links for nonprofits and corporate businesses by creating impactful branding and websites. Join us as we explore the relationship between design, community, and creativity. Welcome to Design Imposter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Design Imposter Podcast. Today, we're joined by our guest, Edan Ben-Atar, who is a SEO and developer and website guy, guru. And we met, I think, back in 2020 on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got connected, but everyone was in lockdown. I was just starting my business. I was like, let me reach out to other people. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of commented on each other's stuff and validated each other.
Yeah.
And then at one point we're like, let's have a call. And then we just like dished on all things development, and we just hated on clients.
Edit that out.
All your relationships forged out of criticism? That's how you met me.
I love critique. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And I met Edan 2 weeks ago where I peppered him with questions about SEO, which I still don't understand completely.
Forgot about that.
Yes. It was late or early, depending on what you want. So this episode is going to be super informative for me because SEO is not my jam.
Nice.
I still have questions.
Nice.
So we can get into it. I'm going to play
do
devil's advocate in this episode.
Let's do it. Love it. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So here's what you need to know. Edan is the founder of Weblime, a digital agency specializing in WordPress and Shopify development and marketing. And he also developed a software called Limey that does everything for an all-in-one website, social media thing.
Yep.
So you want to tell us more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So our agency is called Weblime. Weblime lets you, at Weblime, we develop WordPress and Shopify websites. We used to do social media and other forms of marketing, and we decided to kind of step away from that a little bit because of what we discussed earlier before starting to record, where things get complex with Hootsuite and a bunch of other softwares and everything that's kind of demanded in the market today. And then as we started developing products and, websites for clients and going through all their like hurdles and ups and downs, we saw a bunch of opportunities in place. So from developing Limey and also developing a few WordPress plugins, we kind of started dabbling into different directions of just generating more income for us that's a bit more passive than chasing dead on the service-based side of things. And you two probably know a little bit about that. And yeah, that's pretty much how all this kind of came about from 2020 when Jessica and I started communicating all the way till now. And now we have 2 WordPress plugins. We have Limey and we have Weblime, which is like the main kind of bread and butter engine that's behind all the products that we have as well. And of course, client work.
I did not know that you had developed 2 WordPress plugins.
Yeah, we have 2 WordPress plugins and it's going well. The latest one is called Light, so Liiteio. I hope I spelled that right. But no, so Liiteio lets you have like templates and a few bells and whistles for the Bricks Builder, if you all have heard of it, for WordPress, which I am a huge advocate about. Based out of Germany, they are amazing. If you know anything about the German culture, it is felt in the builder. It is amazing. And so our plugin kind of complements various aspects of the builder that are still not really matured yet. So like integrating with various APIs, you don't have to touch any code. You can just kind of plug in your API key and you're good to go. So, and then the other one is again from like a client need called Limestaff. Instead of integrating with a API and going through the coding route, you can just plug your API key. And then from there, you're good to go with just having a few features and capabilities to have your job board and a few things that Loxo, the plugin that we integrate with, the software that we integrate with, lets you do. So a mouthful, but yeah, got a lot going on.
Nice. Can you give us a little historical context? So how did you get to this place where you now own your business and where did you start?
Sure. So I worked for a company called Platters. Our mission was to cultivate the culture in the office. A mouthful, but the bottom line is that we were a different version of Uber Eats, if you will, or Grubhub maybe is a better example of that. The focus was corporate. instead of going to like the consumer side where folks just open an app and, you know, order food and it's like $20 or whatnot. So we focus on the big deals, like going to Apple, going to Google, closing huge transactions and really just feeding the entire office and cultivating the culture really. So from food all the way to bringing people that can do massage or meditation or any types of service for corporate stuff, which was huge pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And as soon as the pandemic hit, there was no culture to cultivate in the office because there was no office and there was no culture in it. So very quickly we went from pushing millions for this company. I wasn't a founder, but you know, helping in the DMV area. We had no business model really. So the company just went back to the drawing board. Still exists. They've rebranded, but they unfortunately had to let go of pretty much every person that worked for the company, aside from I think like 3 engineers that kind of just held things together while the founders were trying to figure out what in the world they should do with the money that they recruited and the investors that were like on their neck trying to get more funding and like, you know, all that stuff that was going on. So to fast forward, I was part of like a huge round of layoff of a few hundred people that were let go in like a 20-minute Zoom call. So I experienced that.
Love that. That just happened to me in January. It's great.
Really? Just this January? Really? Crazy.
She likes to have her hands in many pots. So she was working, she was doing her agency, she was doing nonprofits, doing the podcast. Like, I keep telling her to calm down.
Yep. And it's an experience when you get that invite on your calendar and you know for a fact that you're literally showing up to show presence and you know exactly what's coming out of that conversation. Like,
we were filming, not together, but like from the convenience of our houses. We were filming the podcast episode with Evan. And that was when Monique got the message that she'd been let go. I was like,
hold on.
And
hold on a second. I'm about to go get laid off. I already knew what was about to happen. We already talked about it. I was like, yeah, just give me like 5 minutes and I'm gonna jump back on the call. I just gotta go get laid off real quick.
No,
we did it.
Go get fired.
Back in. Yeah.
We re-recorded that because I was like, Monique, hello. She's like, I'm getting laid off right now.
I was like, hold on, I'm getting laid off. Like,
I gotta plan what I'm gonna eat after this.
My go-to is pancakes and vodka. Whenever I get laid off, I'm like, I'm gonna go eat pancakes.
And it's crazy because that's still like a lot of people are still experiencing that. Well, you just did in January, and it's by the thousands at this point from like really big companies, not just small ones. So I'm kind of happy that it happened to me so early. In the pandemic. It literally happened when like videos just started going viral, like coming from China and what is this and what is that and is it, you know, whatever, like that whole situation. Before we even knew it, just the lockdown started trickling down in the US. We didn't really even know what's going on yet. And we were let go, I want to say 2 weeks into the situation. It wasn't even, I don't think it was like officially declared as like a pandemic.
Wow.
So I'm really happy. Like at the time, obviously it was like, fuck, I have kids, I have this, I have that. Like, what am I going to do? But very quickly it turned into a situation that I realized that was for the better. I'd rather just have that happen, figure it out, get it over with. Because it's literally happening to millions of people at this point. Might as well do it then instead of like having it like, you know, you just experienced, which is so unfortunate. Get it over with.
She saw it coming for months.
I was like, 6 months ago, I was like, I'm waiting for them. And we probably had done like 10 or 15 rounds of layoffs. So you expect it. And I also was like, I just wish I was in the first round because like this is taking forever. And
I feel you.
The anticipation of knowing it's coming, but like not knowing when, I was like, I'll
just keep taking that paycheck for now, I guess.
I do miss it. I do miss that paycheck, guys. I'm not gonna lie.
And especially also seeing like, I don't know for you, but for us, it was like, okay, we know it's coming. Everybody's like chit-chatting. There's like WhatsApp groups and iMessage groups. And then all of a sudden you're seeing this one's deactivated in Slack. And for us, it was hundreds of people. So you're seeing like deactivated. And you're like, fuck, I'm at 11. Like, and you know, you're like, and like you're saying, Monique, like, you know, you're about to just show up for protocol purposes. But even then, like, it's not fun. And it's not like I personally never have been in that position before. So like you're watching the deactivations on Slack and you're communicating with a few people that you're closer to in the company and you're like, all right, fuck. And then you're on camera and you're like, yeah, I get it. And then it's done and you're like, what do we do now?
Exactly.
You know, like unemployment. Who's up right now? Like, what is Trump tweeting right now? Oh, we are getting unemployed. Okay, how long is when is it?
Exactly.
You know, so like I'm glad that's all over with. So
No, I love that because I think like, yes, I was you watching everyone get deactivated. I'm like, oh shit, did you just see that engineer go offline?
Right.
Oh my God, not him. He's the best engineer. I'm like,
you're seeing
looking
everybody
at it,
go. Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like pinging people, and then I'm like, oh, they just called me into a 15-minute sync. I'm about to go get laid off, guys.
Yep.
Whatever I didn't give you, you're not getting.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, when I was part of the first wave of layoffs from Wells Fargo, and it took place like 6 months before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And somebody like maybe a couple months later messaged me and was like, how do you log into this? And I was like, I don't work for the company anymore.
You better figure it out.
I don't even remember what the URL was for this program that we used all the time. So don't ask me. I don't work there. And she's like,
Yep.
but I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, I'm sorry, Lily. You know?
The one cool thing with where I worked was that everything that we had was company facing. So like our cell phone, we had something called Dialpad. It's like an app, kind of like Skype or whatnot. So you had a virtual number that was connected to your phone. And the same thing was for like text communication based. Like everything was with account management and all this stuff. So literally when I was let go, it went from like, just chaotic world of, nowadays running a business and whatnot, just all these notifications coming in from different directions to just silence, which was really good. Nobody had my personal number for the most part, aside from like, actual team members in the company.
Yep.
But we all got dropped and like, so it was nice.
So how did Webline come about?
Yeah. So fast forward to that. I kind of felt like I had made a lot of money for other people for way too long. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was time for me to dabble into different, directions and see if I could somehow figure out a way where I would just generate money for myself. And I also felt like I experienced a lot of situations where, as far as like culture and all that is concerned, like I wouldn't get, not that I was looking for necessarily praise, but just credit. Like anybody who's been in a sales floor, I worked at Geek Squad and Best Buy and all these different places. But whenever if you're a good salesperson, and usually how they say like it's the 2% that handle the 98%. Yep. So that's what would happen to me. And it's not like me being cocky. It's just self-awareness at sales. I was really good. Yeah. And I was always the one that wanted the commission-based model and not the non-commission-based model and all that. So I always felt like I was making way too much money in other places, and I'm seeing 0.0001% of that, but not necessarily. And even in certain circumstances, like when I worked for Apple, their whole model was, we don't have commission, we're not selling, we're just providing to our clients solutions. And I'm like, motherfucker, I've sold 300 MacBooks and 200 iPhones in the last 28 business days. Yeah. What are you talking about? We're not selling. I'm pushing shit. Like, I want to get paid for that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm working
you're going to get
hard.
the iMac? You should also get the headphones.
Literally, that's what
get this too.
That's
like,
what it
customize
is.
the shit out of it.
And so, like, going through all those different phases in my life, I just felt like I need to figure out a way where I am getting the money that I deserve to get for my, skill set, my capabilities. There's certain things in life that I suck at, and I know that I should outsource and have some other people that are really good do their jobs. And there's certain things where I'm really good at, and I would like to get paid for those, that little toolbox that I was blessed with. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to venture out in my own little world, and it was really convenient to do it while being on unemployment rate.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's kind of how it was born. And then through that phase, I realized that there's like an expiry date to my unemployment. And also, let's be real, like unemployment is enough for like cheese and crackers, but not necessarily for the bottles and the diapers and all the other things that you need at home. So I very quickly understood that this is cute, but like I need to figure out how to get this thing moving really fast. And my approach was, I don't know if we should dive right into that, but my approach was to just hit up I did a few things, some that worked, some that didn't, but really the kind of breakthrough for me was collaborating with nonprofits. And just I came from such a different world where I was doing something completely different, and it was more management than actually touching things myself with my bare hands. So I needed to like build a portfolio and just kind of show people, hey, I know what I'm telling you. Just give me an opportunity and I will show you. And they're like, well, let me see a portfolio. Let me see. You have client references. Do you have any referral, anything? Like, I had nothing to show for aside from saying, well, I helped build this office in the DMV for this company that just got completely annihilated by the pandemic. And there's literally nothing for me to, fall back on. So nonprofits are usually very vulnerable. And it was a much easier route to take than cold calling and like cold hustling with actual companies that already make $1.50 and are not really looking to take a risk with somebody who just got dropped. And so nonprofits was like a complete breakthrough for me because I was able to show my skill set. And even if I somehow needed to tell them, look, this is not really like what I am looking to do, it was okay. Where if it were, there was like a contract scope of work and that whole shebang with like a normal client relationship, that wouldn't fly. Like I would need to figure out behind the scenes, like, how the fuck am I getting through this contract and making sure this client is leaving me a 5-star on, Clutch or GMB or whatever's going on. Like it was a different ballgame. So nonprofits were huge for us.
I can relate to that because when I got laid off from Wells Fargo, everything was proprietary, everything was confidential. So I left no portfolio.
Yeah.
And then I had joined a local networking group and everybody was small business, trying to grow their own small business and networking with other small businesses. So all my first clients ended up being people from this networking group. And once I redesigned everybody's website and did all their branding, I was like, all right, well, I'm not getting referrals, so I'm out of this group. But like small businesses, they didn't have much of a budget. And at that point, I was just desperate to build up a portfolio.
Right.
So, and I did want to touch really quickly on getting unemployment because I had filed for it a little bit before the pandemic hit. And I was collecting, I had just given birth and they start calling me and they're like, you need to come to unemployment classes. You need to come in and sit on this, this thing on, writing your resume and doing this. And I was like, I know how to do that. Because at the same time, I knew I was starting my agency, but I still sent out because you had to show that you were applying for jobs.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And
it was huge too. They wanted proof that you're applying to, I would literally just apply so that I had like screenshots to show.
Yeah.
And some things were teasing me because I was like, fuck, I want to be on my own, but this shit looks really good. Like this job that I'm like pretending to apply for, I might bite if they respond to me. You know what I mean?
If they respond, I might say, hey guys.
Yeah. So this woman's calling me and she's like, you need to come to this thing next week. And I was like, well, listen, I've got like a 1-month-old. Is there a place for me to nurse? And they're like, you can't get a sitter? And I said, no.
For a month? Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm supposed to be on like maternity leave right now. Like I can bring the baby because I was bringing my youngest Finn to networking groups at that point. Like I was going to like the BNIs and stuff with like Finn in a,
hell yeah, good on you.
And everything. And I was like, is there a spot for me to nurse? Like, or can I go do this? And they're like, no, you have to be in attendance the whole time. And I was like, well, I guess that's the end of my unemployment.
That's wild.
But I want to tap into something that you say, because I am doing a lot of mentoring with students from colleges right now who are having a really hard time finding a job in this specific economy. And sometimes you just got to do it. Like, I think one of the things that pulls through in your story to me is like, you got to a point where you were like, hey, what I always say is these companies that we think of as high and mighty, they're put together with duct tape. Any little thing could happen and this whole organization could fall to pieces.
Yep.
And when that happens, you need to have a plan and you need to be able to stick to your plan.
Yep.
And you need to make it actionable. It can't be something that's a fantasy, because I hear students say sometimes like, yeah, I'm not really sure. I have students who have graduated but have been out of work for like a year or 2 years or 3 years at this point. And they're like, I don't really know what to do. I don't really know if my resume is good. And I'm like, you had 3 years. Like you've been sitting for 3 years waiting for a job to come to you. It's not going to come to you.
Right.
You need to looking for a job into a job. Where's your spreadsheet? Where's your numbers? What do you want to do? And everyone is a little ambiguous about that. So I like the idea of being like, okay, I got laid off. That really sucks. Can't be in a victim mentality for too long on that. How can I move forward? How can I progress? Okay, I know I don't want to work for another company. I was making them a lot of money. I want to be able to make myself that same amount of revenue. How can I get to that point?
Right.
And then where do I start? Okay, I don't have a portfolio. I don't have these things. I'm going to start with not-for-profits. There's a little give there. They're willing to accept me as I am. I know I can learn and grow in that space. How can I do that? And then once I get to enough of a point, I'm saying, you know what? I have everything that everyone's been asking for. I can go kill it. Right. And I think that sometimes as a student, you don't necessarily see the process they only see the end, which is like, now you have this successful agency and you're doing all these amazing things and you're probably profitable and all this other stuff, but they can't correlate where you've been to where you're supposed to go, and they don't know how to make that journey. So I always love it when people tell us like, hey, it wasn't easy and I just had to figure it out, and this is my steps for figuring it out, because it helps students to figure out that for themselves.
It's the typical saying where the overnight success that you just saw on TikTok or YouTube or whatever the fuck you like to, just, doom scroll or whatnot, that was not overnight success. There's a 10-year journey behind that, and it probably started out of some backyard or garage or whatever that story is. And there's a lot there. So I agree with it. And the bottom line is, I think, is it comes down to it. Show your worth.
Yes.
Figure out a way to show your worth. I think when you break things down, like for me personally, I was debating if to show my worth through this nonprofit thing that I realized that I could do, or maybe even through open source. Anybody that knows development, there's so many, platforms, WordPress, for example, that we all use. Just go to WordPress.org, look at everything that thousands of developers worldwide are working on, and make some commitments, like literally commit code to the platform, to the repository of WordPress or whatever platform you want to do, and show your worth. And if somebody sees that you're sitting there committing code that is now worldwide used by like whatever the statistic is today, like over 40% of the web, somebody's going to see that and say, you know what, this guy from the WordPress development team or whatever is maintainers. This guy knows what he's doing. Like, maybe we should just outsource some work for this plugin we're working on to him. And you know, that's one way. And there's like nowadays so many ways to do that. Like, it doesn't have to be code. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit. Figure out where you can bring value to the table and just bring it. Like, literally just be willing to put yourself out in a vulnerable position, bring it. And it's going to take some time. It's not to say that you share your worth and then the next day it's done. Again, there's a whole story here, probably a few years, if anything. But like, if you do that consistently enough, something is going to give and luck will turn your way eventually. So for sure.
Absolutely. Like, don't put the expectation on yourself that you're going to hit 100K that first year if you're starting from nothing. Well, no, I mean, my story is different. Don's story is different.
It is.
And you have to start from somewhere. So like my first year, I made maybe like 70K. Very upfront about that.
Fair.
The next year, when that was pandemic,
I think I did like 32 or something along those lines.
Like,
the first year.
It was not an impressive number. People were pinching dollars. It was not a good year to start being an entrepreneur. And everyone can relate to that. But then the next year you had the portfolio and you're like, all right, I'm going to go crush it. You get your 6 figures and you're like, okay, time for me to get contractors.
For sure. Start outsourcing and just scaling things out. And honestly, it's also a great way to just get some experience also. Like, maybe you have set in your head after college or whatever situation you are in life. A lot of times we think we want, a certain little lollipop or XYZ, and it's so flashy and it seems like incredible. And then we finally get to touch it and we're like, fuck. Is this really what it was? Like, this is not the Disney world I had in my little world, imagining. And so a lot of times, if you just, again, in the WordPress world, if you start committing the code and you realize, you know what, I'm not enjoying sitting behind a laptop all day long committing code to the repository. Okay, so maybe you're not you're not cut out to be a programmer. Like, try to see how you can come at this angle from a little different, situation. Like, maybe don't commit the code, maybe manage some other aspect of it. Like, reach out to the team and see what other things. A lot of times you can help maintain the knowledge base that's helping the code. Maybe enjoy writing a little bit and then surfacing that writing and collaborating with content writers about how the code works. Or like, there's so many different layers to it. And as soon as you finally get a tiny bit of exposure and experience, you might realize, well, shit, this is not the angle I got to go all in on. I got to go on a different angle and go all in on it, because I'm not enjoying the first angle that I had in my mind, all, fluffed out and Disney-like and whatnot. I'm not enjoying it, and it's good to notice it in the beginning rather than go 2-3 years chasing something and then realizing, damn, this is not what I really wanted, So, and by the way, to bring that back also in my story, for me, it was as collaborating with nonprofits, I realized that it's nice helping nonprofits, but their budget and
they ain't got no money, y'all. That's what he said.
Exactly. Yep. That's the bottom line.
They ain't got no money.
They have to account to their donors.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? Like, I get it. And so it became a thing where, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this favor, but like, I really need to pay the bills. So I'm going to stop it at, maybe helping 2 nonprofits per quarter or whatever it is. Because I still think it's great for networking. It's great for showing my, getting exposure, whatever referrals. It's really become like a nice backbone, one of the, say, solid pillars for my agency. So I don't want to fully neglect it yet. And I don't see it as doing a good deed, but at the same time, we got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I got to buy diapers. I got a lot to do. So it's also a great way to like understand about your clientele, and that experience can go in so many different directions. So by all means, dive deep in as soon as you can.
Yeah. I was going to say, we talk about a lot, like students going into internships so that they can figure out what they like or what they don't like, specifically before you get into a 4-year curriculum, get to the end, graduate with a bachelor's degree, and then say, I absolutely hate marketing or design or whatever it is, which a lot of people do.
Yep.
I would suggest that you get yourself out there in the space, tackle whatever it is that you think you are going to be able to do. Just put a little like meat on the bone so that you can really understand exactly what you're supposed to be doing, because there will become a point where like after a 4-year degree, your parents are way less like, oh, well, you wanted to be a doctor, but now you want to be an artist. They're like, no, you're going to be a doctor. We spent the money already.
Right.
And you have to figure that out before you get into $100,000 in debt, which is very much what's happening right now, is that kids are going into these programs idealized on what they think they want to do, specifically UX. We've been talking about this in the last the last speakers that we had for podcasts about boot camps, how these kids are going into boot camps. They cost $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, 16 weeks. You miss a week, you're so far behind, you can't keep up. And then you're like, I'm $60,000 in debt. These people have guaranteed me a job. They can't deliver. Now I'm here. I hate UX, or I hate whatever this thing is. What am I supposed to do now?
Yep.
And at that point, it's too late. And like until
because you're so deep in the hole, like
exactly. Yeah. And now you feel obligated. Now you're in a job, and if you do happen to get a job, now you're in a place that you absolutely hate. Like you could feel it in your like bones and your spirit. The people around you will start to notice that like this person doesn't really want to be here.
Yep.
And you can't show up as your full, true, and authentic self and be happy and gracious, and the money doesn't matter. And believe me, 6 figures is not as much money as y'all think it is.
Nope.
It really
especially
ain't.
not today.
And especially after
Post-pandemic
taxes.
and all that. Yeah, for sure.
So I want to pivot a little bit to the SEO side, because where did that come in? How do you go from sales to search engine optimization?
So I will say this. I think it's important just to add some context.
Sure.
I always had a passion for the online world. We're kind of, I'll say it in this room, a generation where like while we were coming up, things were changing up on us really fast. I think today that's still the case, especially with AI, but now it's, I guess, less tangible like it was in our time, where people literally went from having no phones to having phones and going on eBay, and all of a sudden there's Amazon. And like there was a whole, like, we went through so many cycles of like just technology revamping our day to day. And for me, my first little stunt was trying to sell computers on eBay, and trying to figure that out, and then learning, okay, there's this thing called Amazon, and then realizing maybe I should have my own little website on the site, and everything failed, right? Like miserably, which is okay. But I did sell a bunch of computer parts, and I built my own PCs for gamers, and like I sold it and maybe made $3 along the way, and like it was not profitable, but it gave me a bunch of exposure. And during that time, throughout the years, I started kind of getting experienced with SEO and the pros and cons of SEO and how it all works. And one of the projects that I really went deep into was heavily based on SEO. It was called thetarlife.com. It doesn't exist today. It'll forward to LimeMe.io, just for SEO purposes. Get that link juice that I worked on for years prior. But the idea of a tar life was what medium.com is today. I had this idea of, there's like this thing called Pinterest that's like exploding with images. What if the same concept happened, but for authors and like writers? And they had a platform where they could go into, and then there was an audience, and this whole thing, right? It failed miserably. It was really hard. I had to pay a bunch of authors. I was working full time to just completely offset my income with like this expense that I was having over my head. And I wasn't on my own at the time. And it became really challenging. But the one thing that came out of it was I learned SEO really well because certain articles all of a sudden hit. And I had to kind of reverse engineer and understand, why is this article performing so well? I thought this author was not even that good. But he happened to nail the way that he was writing and the keywords that he was using and everything he did, or she, whatever it was, it worked really well and Google loved it. And there was a reason Google loved it. And so I had to kind of reverse engineer that and slowly understand why it's working, why other ones didn't work, and how to also boost up the ones that didn't work and make them work, right? And not everything can work, but if there's some basis to it and some potential, usually you can push them up in the rankings. So
I'm going to play devil's advocate on SEO because I'm good at it. So can you give us a little bit of an explanation of what SEO is? I feel like it's a buzzword. A lot of people keep saying it, but people don't know what it is and why it's important to their business.
Yeah, sure. So SEO it's an abbreviation for search engine optimization, if anybody just happens to not know that. And the idea is that you push your ranking in Google upward. And Google is kind of, up until the AI started surfacing from like ChatGPT in that world, Google was just king. Like if you're not on Google, then you're not online. That's the bottom line, really. There is no more like yellow pages and all of that like we used to have. Google is where it's at, and that's where it ends. So the goal of SEO is just getting yourself to go up the ranking in Google. That's the bottom line in a nutshell.
So the idea being the higher up you are in the Google search engine, the more ability you have for someone to find your website, as opposed to them going to page 23.
Exactly. And the game has gotten a lot thicker over time. Google wanting to monetize this whole business model a lot more, which started with no income. It was just, I don't think they had ads in the first day or two of Google. And over time, they started introducing ads, and then those ads started kind of fighting for real estate on that first page and second page. And then all of a sudden, ads kind of tagged along with you when you got to the second and third and fourth and fifth and whatever page. And then ads started being at the bottom and not just at the top. And now there's also ads on the side. And so the organic real estate now, which is what we do for, when you're doing SEO, so the room for real estate that we're fighting for at this point is really small, right? Like if we used to have a mansion that everybody had room in, at this point, it's a tiny little room and everybody's fighting to be in that little room. And the fight with AI has also kind of turned up a huge notch where now it's like 1,000x harder because anybody can do anything with AI. And the fight for that little room that Google has left us with is really big.
So with AI, a lot of people are using it for like content generation. Is Google catching on to what is AI generated, what is human, and disqualifying some content?
So this is, I think this can actually be a whole podcast on its own. It's really fascinating, especially to me because like I live this thing every day. So the other day, this was like 2 weeks ago, we get a call, I answer it. And one of the things I like to ask at the end of the call, you probably do the same, is, by the way, how'd you hear about us? If the conversation actually has some meat in it, right? Like I don't ask it with every person, but if there's an interesting convo, I usually end it with, by the way, how did you even, and the answer was, oh, I have this AI app. And I'm like, ChatGPT? Oh, no, it's this other thing that my neighbor that's a friend recommended. And I'm like, well, shit, that's cool. Yeah. And so I asked him, like, what did you type into the AI that I was, and I was like, damn, that's pretty good. Yeah. I'm impressed by myself. Like my own, this is.
Look at me.
Yeah, I'm not, what do you mean? AI is like pushing me? What do you mean? I was shocked. It's not an answer you hear every day. And it was like the first time that it happened to me, I was like, fuck. AI is relying so heavily on the existing content that the SEO game has gotten harder, but it's actually turned to a different direction now. Because if you think about it, AI relies completely on existing knowledge and logic, right? Like as of now, I know that you can listen to like how they want to make it smarter and to learn to reason, and so that we can ask really hard questions. But as of right now, where we stand, Google just signed with Reddit, so that way every single Reddit post is exposed to Google's algorithm, and ChatGPT can't crawl Reddit. They've blocked, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a whole game there. And so now there's all these different AI models that are relying on different sets of knowledge base, where I might come up as, say, a second recommendation in ChatGPT, but shit, if you go to Perplexity and you're using a different language model, then you might see completely different recommendations because they rely on Yelp, and they have a different, contract with Yelp. And Reddit, got dished out by Google, but Yelp and Microsoft are having fun together. So it's a whole thing. And then, so that conversation kind of got me realizing, because for a little bit when AI started surfacing, I started thinking this might be the end of SEO. Like if everybody just starts using AI, where does that leave room for SEO? And as soon as that happened, it hit me where, okay, SEO is not fully going away. The competition is a lot harder. Yeah. And that little room that I described is really, really small, and it's getting harder to get into. But once you're in it, now it's amplified to all these different platforms that we're not even in charge of. And you can't push an ad as of today, this recording, you cannot advertise with ChatGPT. We can't influence ChatGPT, if you will, in the more direct manner that we can influence Google's algorithm, or at least what we were able to influence it up until, today or yesterday. So it's a really interesting discussion to if you look at the influence that SEO is having on AI, they actually go hand in hand, and one is not kind of riding over the other and eliminating it. So pretty cool.
I think it'll be really interesting when we get to the space where you can buy those results on AI. Because eventually
it's coming.
You might be able to.
It's coming. Well, here's an interesting one for you. I was listening to, I listened to Pivot, which is a Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway, a really cool podcast. And he was saying something interesting, Scott Galloway, where we don't realize, because so many billions of dollars are getting kind of just tossed at anything related to AI, but there is no business model that's actually profitable with AI. ChatGPT is deep. Yeah. I'm talking deep in the hole. If it wasn't for Satya Nadella and Microsoft and that whole relationship, we would not have, as consumer users, ChatGPT. When you're using ChatGPT, there are no ads. There is no proper business model as of today for AI. And one place that it might go is that while we're communicating with this AI little friend that we all have nowadays, depending on what model and whatever the hell, but we all have these friends now, and these friends are going to be advertising to us while we're communicating with them. That might be one direction that they take when they do have to turn a profit, because as of right now, everybody's like, well, just keep innovating. We want this to happen with video and audio and this and that. But when the CEOs of the huge firms that are funding this, whether it's Meta that's funding AI or Google now that's funding AI, all these companies, they're pouring billions and competing with one another. But at the end of the day, when they need to turn a profit, what's that going to look like? Yeah. And how is that going to kind of bring back AI for a little bit? Because the same thing happened with Google. Everybody wanted to use Google, and now for SEO, it's really hard. And all of a sudden, some people are focusing on Bing, or some people are focusing on Yelp or Clutch or different places where they might get exposure, and it's helping their SEO, but it's not necessarily dead on focusing on Google's, algorithm. So interesting.
Nice. What I hear is, Monique, you need to develop an app that integrates ads into AI so profitable. I'm hearing. So give us a little bit of context as a process with SEO, because people who need to get it for their website or think that they need to get it, what's the underlining kind of factor? So what's your business's process as to how you figure out what the keywords are for SEO, down to how you implement those things, and then how long does it take for this to become something that raises you in the ranks in Google?
Yeah, sure. So I think it highly depends on the product that you're dealing with, the landscape that you're in, whether you're pushing a certain type of mission statement that's really, just in a thick environment where it's really hard to push it, or whether it's just there's less competition, it's a little easier. It also comes down to if it's local or nationwide or international, and then it's just completely different ball games between them all. People often hear just SEO, and unfortunately, it's one bucket, but it really is not. You can really be super successful with local SEO and never have to bother with any other form of SEO. And there are many. And you can say the same statement about nationwide SEO. Like you can really be good at garnering and bringing in traffic to your site nationwide, but not necessarily be so big specifically in the zip code or state that you're in.
Interesting.
So that's a whole thing right there. As far as like the steps that we take, it comes down to a few. So first off, obviously we do some basic research and audit on the environment that we're looking at. And what's like the tech stack that we're going to be working with, and what is the existing exposure. And that doesn't necessarily mean just for the client or the website that we're working on. Like if, say for example, I'm trying to push a home improvement company, we'll use that as an example. Are there competitors in this area, or is for some reason home improvement in this area not a good thing that we can push? Like what is happening here? And what that helps us understand is if there are competitors that are ranking, what are they ranking for? And then we can kind of reverse engineer it and go back to our client and start to kind of, play along. And first off, just make sure that we're in the same line as for what competition is doing and how our client is looking. And that's usually like a very basic level. And then from there, we need to start now doing things that the competition is not doing. And then we'll start to kind of get a bit more creative. And again, this has also gotten really crazy because of AI. We used to be able to influence Google's algorithm a lot more by just having a blog and stuffing it with keywords. And if you knew how to play the game from that direction, you can really rank well for, blog posts. And then you have internal links that slowly feed, and it's like a whole funnel internally in your in your little bubble, where those links are slowly feeding into the homepage or whatever service page internally that you're pushing. With AI relying so much on, different platforms, even that has gotten really tricky because we can't just toss up a blog post and start to rank. Now we need to make sure that we have a good Clutch profile. We need to make sure that we have a good Yelp profile. We need to make sure that somebody is active on Reddit, because if you're not active on Reddit, then all of a sudden Google. This is one of.
I didn't even think about.
This
Reddit
is one of.
side.
By the way,
we use it
side
for user
note,
testing.
this is one of my biggest, more recent, kind of like whatever, is somebody needs to be in every single brand, company, you name it, active on Reddit.
Yeah.
If you're not, you're literally not following what the market trend is looking like.
Make some notes.
Oh yeah, listen to this.
Yeah, I was gonna say we use my previous company. We use Reddit for user testing, like interviews. We would put calls to action on Reddit, have people respond to those call to actions, and pay them $50 to go through our application flow, because people are continuously on that platform, always engaging, and it was just really easy to get some people. Now I did get a lot of African princes telling me they could send me $10 million. Never panned out though. But it was a really good platform to get the type of engagement we were looking for without like going through a platform like usertesting.com in order for us to, pull in a populace of people. So I will agree with that.
I'll give you two reasons, and when we'll carry on with not focusing only on Reddit here, but two reasons why it's stupidly important for you to be active on Reddit. The first one is the biggest search engine in the world just publicly signed with them and didn't hide it, that they will feed them billions, so that way the data in Reddit is exclusively provided to Google, aka the biggest influencer in search in SEO is Reddit.
Yeah.
That's the new model now. Right?
Well,
where it used to be Yelp and other platforms. And now Google and Reddit have all of a sudden become best friends. And you cannot neglect this platform. And the second reason is Reddit just went public recently, right? They made some noise around that. Guess what the second most famous website in the world is?
Is it Reddit?
Reddit.com. So if you're not focused on Reddit, and you're running an online entity of any sort, and you need traffic, of course.
Yep.
I know that there are some businesses that they treat their website more of like a business card. It's for protocol purpose. I get that whole thing. But if it's not, and in most cases it's not, and you really need to push, and you're neglecting Reddit, I mean, you're really just like ignoring market trends, ignoring what's right in front of you, written black on white. Like you cannot ignore this. reddit.com.
I've already noticed when I do searches on Google.
Oh, yeah.
Reddit
It's the
pops
first
up.
thing that pops up.
And
Yeah.
but are people more inclined to like click over to a website to read a full answer, or is it almost like the Amazon effect where you see a product, you go right to the reviews before you like read the product description and you like invest in reading? Because if the product reviews aren't that great, then you're like, I'm going to skip on this. But when you go to Reddit, people are kind of giving their product review on,
Right.
different things. So I think I did something like garden related, and I was like, when is the best time to plant the zucchini? And like, in Pennsylvania. And then there was all these people like chiming in. Well, I actually got it to happen in May, and other people were like, oh, you got to plant it in June, like stupid stuff like that.
Yeah.
But by reading the reviews, you're like, well, I didn't really need to go to a blog, like, and go through. It's like, when you're going looking for a recipe, you're like, I really didn't need to go through somebody's life story to find out when I should plant zucchini.
Yeah.
So I 100%, now that you're talking about this, I'm like, oh yeah, it makes sense.
And I would argue that it's one of the harder platforms to actually get active on, because if you really want to do it right, then you can't just, when we say, get active on Reddit, there's all these reasons that justify that we just covered and more. Well, what does that mean? You can't just go to Reddit, open an account, and say in our world, just a few months ago, you could just do a blog post, optimize it, get some backlinks, start, doing that whole thing. And as it goes up, once it's in there, it's done and you're good. With Reddit, you need to open an account and you need to really get active. There are moderators in every single subreddit that treat the subreddit differently, completely. For the most case, for the most part, there is like, the don't spam, don't this, don't solicit, whatever, like that whole thing. But like after the first 5 rules, then it kind of gets niched down to like specifics. If it's about pets or if it's about this or whatever. And to be active in the subreddit and an active member, you need to play your role. So you can't just go into Reddit and open an account and say, well, I heard this guy on a podcast and he said Reddit, so let me just start. I'm getting backlinks. It's great. The DR is high. Like, da-da-da. How are you going to do that? You got to literally respond to people and communicate and ask questions and engage. Imagine if somebody just heard that networking works and went to a networking event and literally had on their forehead, hey, I build websites. Hey, I build like, no, that's not how it works. Create a relationship. Let somebody trust you, aka online on Reddit. Make sure that your user with a fucking avatar, it's not even you. I don't care how you think you look or if your voice is deep and you're charismatic. Like online, it's different. In Reddit, it's very different. And then every 10, 11, 12 posts that you make, you might find an opportunity. Well, shit, let me just add a hyperlink over here while I'm recommending a specific little something about SEO and just, add some alt text that says web design agency because it'll link to webline.com, which is my, that whole thing. But you can't do that every single post. And even when you do, it needs to look really organic and natural, right? And it's really hard to do that. Like as opposed to going online and, publishing a blog post, paying a content writer like $300 to have something really top notch and like auditing it then and then it's done and then backlinks and whatever, and it's a whole different thing. But on Reddit, it's really hard.
This is making me think about LinkedIn and when people like you connect and like, oh, hey, let me, I saw your website. I think you do website design services, but
you should see my inbox. That's why.
I know. I like, that's probably one of the reasons I've dropped off of LinkedIn. Monique is stepping up her game on LinkedIn. I'm dropping off because I'm like, I'm tired of this. But one of the things is, and this is probably where our relationship comes in, is that we connected, we formed a long relationship where we did not have a phone call for a very long time.
Right. It was straight like just random communication.
But like we built that trust factor. And then when I had a question about SEO, I called you up when, we built that relationship organically through trust. And that's kind of what you're achieving through Reddit and all these other platforms. And also you need to engage with other people on LinkedIn and these other platforms. So you can't just be like, I build websites and here's what you're going to do. Like you have to go to other people's things and not just be like, oh, you made a post about this, but I really think you should go over to this blog and it'll explain it. Like you need to comment and be organic and real. And then they'll,
and one more nugget about Reddit, and then and I promise we can move on. I didn't mean to get stuck on it. It's just I'm really passionate about this right now because I think it's like completely changing the game on how SEO is perceived and whatnot. I would, because you brought up how Monique has gotten really active on LinkedIn, I would argue that social media as a whole is going to get the carpet kind of pulled out without noticing, or while noticing, if you will. Because if you think about it, only YouTube and Reddit are platforms where when you have content that works, it can literally be pulled up years down the road.
Yes.
We've all been there where we had something that really fucking bothered us and we needed a solution. And all of a sudden a random ass Reddit post from 4 years ago is what gave us the solution. Yes. Or, true story, my wife gets angry, the washing machine gets fucked. I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, damn, do we really need to drop right now $2,000 on a random washing machine when we just moved into the crib or whatever it was?
Yeah.
Let me do YouTube for a second. Damn, I can fix this with a YouTube video that was uploaded 7 years ago about the specific model that's in my basement. And sure enough, I fixed it with a $7 belt that I ordered from Amazon and waited, and it came the next day and it was all done. Yep. The washing machine still broke like 12 months later.
But that was 12 months.
But I'm saying, that saved you money. But my point holds, right? Like, my wife was happy. We were really good. We were washing the washing machine made some noise and it was weird a little bit, but it worked.
It worked.
And everything was solid. And the YouTube video that was uploaded years back with that old ass model that I somehow had in my basement when we first moved into the house that I live in, it worked. It all clicked. And YouTube and Reddit are the only platforms you can say that, where Monique, where you're active on LinkedIn, or if I'm say active on Instagram or Facebook or whatnot, that shit lives for 24 to 48 hours and it's done. Yeah. And that's what turned me off, because I got some deals from LinkedIn. My first Shopify opportunity was from LinkedIn. I'm very thankful for what like LinkedIn as a social entity, brought to the table, as opposed to like Instagram and different stuff that didn't really click with me as much. I love the B2B space, but it's gotten overcrowded. I think AI is even more making it like stupidly boring. The posts there are so overdramatic and like nonsense and fluffed out, and they die after 24 hours. So like, you need to sit there and manage a whole calendar and make sure that you're uploading 3 times a week, every single week. And guess what happens the second you go on vacation? And if you didn't upload for whatever week, or maybe God forbid something happens and you just couldn't be active, your kid, your baby, whatever it was, you know that algorithm is about to annihilate you. You know that. And now you got to get momentum going again and waste all that time to just, hey, algorithm, please give me some love. I'm going to start to post every day, and I'm going to be a bitch and engage with every single post I see. That way you realize that I'm engaging, and, get that whole and then as soon as you step away for a sec again, it's done. Reddit and YouTube, you cannot say that. It'll live for years. I got it. So I think the effort goes way longer and it compounds over time.
I'm going to comment on your washing machine. So I moved into, a lot of people know this, I moved into a house built in 1843.
You told me about this. I remember that.
And so it would cost hundreds of thousands to get it, to a good point where somebody would feel like, oh, this was a completely flipped house by Joanna Gaines. No, I don't have that kind of money. So when we first moved in, I YouTubed videos on how to update electrical. Now, I don't do the knob and tube because that is too old school. Sometimes I do a little bit of it, but like, I just installed plumbing in my kitchen. I changed the faucet. I installed the light myself. And you're like, man, I mean, most women are like, I'm just going to hire an electrician. Even men, they'll be like, I don't want to play with the wires. Listen, you turn off the circuit breaker, black goes to black, white goes to white, neutral wire, and you're done.
And look at that. And all of a sudden it's not Chinese to you.
And the thing is, this information is constant. Electrical hasn't changed in a very long time. So that content does live on. Now, the fact that they're posting this content and telling me how to do it, I'm not going to call them to come do my electrical. But it does make me realize when something is too much. Like, my kid's bedroom only had one outlet. So I'm going to hire an electrician to do that because I know it's on my skill set. So it does kind of, you can do this, but you also need to know what your limits are. So you could have a video, this is how you're going to do SEO. You do it for a little bit and you're like, this is more in depth than I thought. But Edan did this great video. I trust him, so let me hire him to take over.
I'm going to pivot a little bit back to SEO. What are the most common SEO mistakes you see businesses making?
I think I'll say this. One of the things that bother me the most as a person that like manages this stuff a ton is when people come in with a certain prejudice or certain opinion or whatnot, where I don't want to update the heading because I need my brand to be seen in a certain way. Well, guess what? There is too much research that shows that one of the biggest, influencers, if you will, when it comes to your actual site, not, Reddit and YouTube and all the outside world, but on your site, one of the biggest things is that first H1 tag on your site. And if we could stuff in there that you are a home improvement company, then we know for a fact that you will rank within 72 hours if you're talking local SEO. Do you want to do that or not? You know what I mean? So a lot of times what ends up happening is founders come to the table and they say, well, here's, $5,000 a month. Let's start doing XYZ. But then they're not willing to allow us to truly do what we need to do in order to, unfortunately, play by the rules of the game. I'm not even trying to game the system. I am literally, there is a ton of research that justifies every single step that we want to take on your site. And if you're sitting as a founder and telling me, well, I don't want to be seen in this way, or I don't want to stuff it and look, to be noticed that way. Okay, so you hired an SEO agency to do XYZ, but you're not letting us do X, Y, or Z. So that's my whole thing when it comes to it. Like, if you're actually willing to look at SEO and you're actually willing to invest money into it, then let the professionals do what they imagine. Bringing, to your example, bringing an electrician and then saying, don't put the outlet there. I want the outlet on the ceiling, and the electrician telling you, well, but you have kids and maybe we should, whatever analogy you want to look at, just let the professional do what they do best. Or arguing with an electrician saying, well, I don't want the plus there, I want the minus there, and I'll tell you, but you need to ground it, and plus goes here and minus goes here. We can't just change it. There's enough research that shows that if I flip this shit will fry, it'll burn. Right? Like, it just, and the same thing with SEO, it won't rank. You're making me just not play by the rules of the game. And I get that to an extent. Certain founders and business owners, they want to control the brand, they want to control the message, and all that. But at the same time, you got to play by the rules of the game if you want to be in it.
I worked with this company, I guess in the fall. Monique and I were working with this company. We redid the website. They were like, we want to get an SEO. And then when they found out how much it was going to cost, they're like, oh, we can't afford an SEO.
We don't want to get in.
It was a nonprofit.
Of course.
So I barely know enough to get by, but I know enough. And they just sent me this flip book, and they were like, hey, this is our newsletter that we print out and send to all of our donors. So it's not like it's top secret information. They're like, can you put this flip book version on the website? And I said, you have some really great articles in here about stuff that you're trying to push. Like, you've got this program that you said doesn't get enough attention. You got 3 articles in this flip book about this program. So why don't we just take the article? You got great pictures too.
Google can't digest that.
I was exactly.
Let's make this text actually written on your site.
And I said this. I was like, you asked me before about. You said before SEO was too expensive for you. I'm telling you right now, if you do this, you can link it. You've got an FAQ page, and you mention this program, but you don't have a page about this program. So I'm like, you can really build into this. But I think the marketer was so proud of her flip book. She was like, no, we'll just do the flip book. And I was like, oh, okay.
And that's what I was getting at. Like, a lot of times the people that touch the goods, they get so passionate about it that they're like, I need this to be purple and to be round because that's just, I like it. And I got a lot of compliments about it. And when you sit there and tell them, but look, purple doesn't fly around here because in this room, what we do is orange. And they're like, no, I want purple. But you paid me because you wanted orange. You know what I mean? Like,
this is Monique's world right here.
Like, we see it all the time. And by the way, I have to say a lot more no than yes because of this, because oftentimes they will come and I realize this is a person we can't really influence. Like, they're so passionate. And I get it. Again, I understand. But like, if you're not running Apple or Google, you can't really allow yourself to just say, but this is my baby, da-da-da. Like, well, you want to pay the bills, you want diapers, you want to be able to afford X, Y. Let me do what we do, and you do what you do. And I promise you, when we meet around the track, everybody will be okay. And we'll,
I regularly tell people, you're not your customer.
Right.
You have no idea what your customer wants. What you think they want and what they actually want, wildly different things. And I'm not saying that you're not a subject matter and your specific expertise, whatever that thing is, but you're not the person purchasing. You're the person selling, and you have to change that mindset. And if we have to do something random that maybe you don't understand or use a color that you don't really correlate with, we're going to have to do what we have to do. And if you're not willing to trust me, then you hired me for no reason.
Right.
I'm happy to take your money, and I will. But I was like, but you're doing yourself and your business a disservice. And the only thing we're doing is sitting here arguing. And I do charge a tax for people getting on my nerves. So let's
Or
just be honest.
when you said something, they say no, and then they come back later. You're like, well, that's time and a half.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you come to us and you're like, hey, I need a logo or I need a website, I give you the price and you say, oh, I can get this cheaper on Fiverr. I'm like, go ahead. Do it. 100%. You should make that happen for yourself.
One of the
If you
reasons
think you can get what we're giving you on Fiverr, you should do it. But when you come back to me in 6 months, I'm going to charge you double.
Yeah.
I'm going to charge you double.
Yep.
One of the reasons I dropped out of branding, I don't like really making logos, is because when I was working with these small businesses, they'd be like, oh, I want a logo design for like my home construction company. You're like, okay, cool. And then they're like, can you add a fishing rod? Well, why? Well, because, you know, it's my company and I want to pay homage to my son who really likes fishing. And I'm like, but does it make sense? And then there comes a point where you're like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry. Go find a different designer because it just violates every principle. You came to me for expertise. I can't give it to you. So it's not a good fit.
Yep. Yep. It's rough.
And then I'd be curious to know, when is it time to hire for SEO versus what you can do yourself? So there are small businesses out there or not-for-profits who are like, yeah, I really want to invest in this. We just don't have the budget. What can they do on their own to help them rank or to rise rank in the organically or paid ads if that's what they so choose versus like when you're like, hey, it's actually time to hire someone to help you with this work?
Yes, I think it's, I hate to say it, but it really just depends. Because I would say that more often than not, you're in a situation where it might make sense to only do one thing and not the other. Yeah. And that might mean that you are literally just neglecting SEO on purpose because you've got investors on your neck and literally they will pull the knife on you if you don't deliver. We've seen this. Steve Jobs was let go, and like, you know, there's so many examples of CEOs getting dropped. And so unfortunately, if push comes to shove and you need to show something today, yesterday, tomorrow, SEO is not for you, not right now. SEO is for you down the road when you're feeling a bit more comfortable with that knife on your neck and it's a bit more loose. Sorry for the brutal analogy, but that's really what it comes down to, honestly. So it really just comes down to the budget, the timing, the situation that you're in. So again, I hate to say it depends, but that's really what it is. And then if you are going to SEO, then it just depends on like what niche you're in. Like, do we need to make sure that you're on Yelp, Houzz, and Angie's List, or do we need to make sure that you are on Clutch, UpCity, and other directories for web design and SEO purposes and whatnot? So and then even then, and this is something that I hate. We hear a lot where just go organic, it doesn't cost money. The truth is, and I'll tell you the truth, I don't hide it, SEO costs a lot of money. And AI is about to make it cost, like I said earlier, even more. So the reason for that is Google is heavily influenced by Yelp, Facebook, now Reddit, and a few of these really like humongous dogs that are in the game, right? All these platforms, without a single hiccup, maybe Reddit you could argue isn't, maybe, but all of them are heavily influenced by money.
Yeah.
And I'll give an example. I run a web design agency. We noticed at a certain point that Clutch, even though we're completely like, we're not asking for reviews on Clutch, we're kind of insisting, I was being a bit stubborn, if you will. I don't need Clutch. Like, we've got a shit ton of reviews. We know our SEO. We're ranking for this. We're ranking for that. I just don't need it. And all of a sudden, Clutch is high up in ranking, and I'm seeing that Google is just valuing Clutch more than my domain, even though my Clutch profile was opened 3 years ago, really for protocol purposes, if you will. Not any other reason, right? We've all been there. Like, you're on Yelp, but you don't have a single review, or you're on TripAdvisor, you don't have a single review. We only did that for the citations in the first sprint that we did for SEO, and it was one and done. But nowadays, when Reddit all of a sudden is favored over other platforms, and you can say the same line that I just said about Reddit, about Clutch and BBB and Facebook and Yelp, So a few of these, humongous dogs, like I said, are influencing SEO completely. But guess what? Try to open a profile on Yelp and start getting reviews and see what happens. You're going to get called, and it's going to be a very aggressive call. In the beginning, it might be a little nice, but as you say no or have some rebuttals, it'll get aggressive. And it's okay. We've all been in sales. And that salesperson's job is to get you to give them a credit card and to start pushing your profile. Guess what happens if you don't? You start going down in Yelp's algorithm. And guess what? We've even seen, and well, Yelp doesn't admit this, you can go to Reddit, you can go to different forums where there's actually open discussions that aren't influenced by capitalism. And you will see that all these different platforms are heavily influenced by money. And we've seen customers that we helped. I had one customer in home improvement dominating in Maryland. All of a sudden, 5-star reviews, it was like 4.8, 4.9, like just really great, right? All around. Sold for a good amount in the end. Their Yelp profile was a constant battle that they faced as a founder. And the reason was they got pissed off at their sales rep and decided, I'm not paying Yelp anymore because I feel like I'm getting scammed. I'm not implying that Yelp is a scam. I just think that
I think it is.
I just didn't want to say myself. You said it.
This podcast is not endorsed by Yelp.
We don't know her.
Yeah.
Until it is.
We don't
No,
know
seriously.
her.
So guess what happens? There was 2 reviews for this business out of close to like 30 or 40 on Yelp because the founder went out of their way to try to push these reviews to the bottom. And we've all been there. Sometimes customers will just really be brutal with you, even though the job was completely done professionally. Everything was good, but this one little hiccup and all of a sudden people don't realize the influence that a 2-star review can have on your business and what type of pistol they hold in their hand without realizing at your business, because it can completely destroy you. And so it was 2 reviews that we worked so hard to push back. The mistake was that the business owner decided to start paying to get more impressions on Yelp. As soon as they stopped paying, those 2 reviews surfaced to the top.
Yeah.
Out of like 30 reviews that were all 4 to 5 stars. And so we called, we communicated, we tried everything. Ended up in forums realizing that, I don't remember if it was Reddit or not, but some forum where you see this whole discussion where they claim that they don't touch, they claim that they don't do, but if you start paying, then they'll scratch your back. And so this model was adopted by BBB. You want to be accredited? Okay.
Yep.
You want to be A+ or you want to be B+? You want to be A+?
How much money you have?
Yep.
Exactly. Oh, you
willing to
stop
spend.
paying. Okay, you're B+ now, right? Are you getting reviews? What are we? How are we handling that? Your reviews on Google are not the same. Oh, you want us to pull the reviews from Google? Are you a paying profile? Because if you are a paying profile, we'll pull some of those reviews and just touch them up. True story. Not making this shit up.
Yep.
And we'll touch them up so that they're not in first person because we're pulling them and they're from a different platform, but it's the same name, same review, same 5-star. And that happens over and over. Clutch, capitalism. Yelp, capitalism. And I'm not like completely social, whatever. I'm right in the middle, I promise you. I'm not crazy in either direction. But that's the bottom line. That unfortunately, capitalism is cool until sometimes it's not. And that's unfortunately how we see it in the SEO world where, and to kind of bring it back home, what I was saying is when people say that SEO, you can go organic and organic sounds like you can just do it like without spending money. Guess what? Nowadays on BBB and Clutch and Yelp and all these different platforms, if you're not paying to play the game, you're not going to get the impressions and you're not going to get the exposure and the leads and the traffic that you're there for. So it's a really hard situation to deal with. SEO has gotten a lot trickier over the years.
I'm going to segue this into the next, probably the last question, which is about the consistency of posting. But it sounds like just based on what that story with Yelp is that you can't go dark for a while. Like you have to be consistent with it. You can't just throw money, come back in a couple months, throw money. So what is your experience with people who have smaller budgets or who aren't consistent with it? Like what are they seeing in terms of results and is it worth it at that point?
So I say choose your battles and choose them wisely. If you're starting to pay for Yelp, make sure you can keep paying them and understand that it's almost like a bribe. That's really what it is. Because the second that the reason I say that is the second that you stop, there's in a situation there that you're going to have to deal with afterwards because you stop paying, not because you did anything different. The only thing that changed is you stopped paying. So if you're with a small budget, you really need to understand that wherever you push your money, it needs to be consistent. If you're doing a blog, stick with it for a minute, try to outrank some blog posts, focus on that. If you're deciding that you're going to splurge a little bit and get a clutch profile to start working in your favor, make sure from day one that you can continue to pay this bribe, because understanding that the second that you stop, there's going to be a situation that you deal with that surfaces as soon as you tell them, hey, please deactivate the payment, right?
So
it's
so unfortunate.
It's brutal. It sucks. There is not a single platform aside from Reddit, and I promise I'm not influenced by Reddit at all.
This podcast was sponsored by.
Right? No. Yeah, seriously. It's just really the only platform that hasn't fully been influenced by money, and I think that is happening now with AI. And even there, people can game the content and be active, but not necessarily as active as you may have needed to be. But again, to keep going with your question, I think you got to pick and choose your battles as you do with anything in life. So treat the same with SEO. If you're focusing on your site for a minute, then focus on the technicality of your site. Make sure everything is tidied up. Make sure everything is looking good. If you're starting to splurge a little bit, even then, focus on specific directions that you want to take. Don't try to win them all. Yeah. If you think that you can go ahead and have a really sexy Yelp profile and a really sexy Clutch profile and a really sexy BBB and on and on and on, there's Upcity and there's Design Rush, and I'm speaking from our world, but like this shit goes on. If you're in home improvement, it's TripAdvisor and not TripAdvisor, Angie's and House. It just goes on. And sometimes they acquire each other and you just got to play along. Yeah. So if you're not ready to play simultaneously in all these different fronts, then just choose your battles and fight in those specific battles properly and equip yourself, rightfully so you can actually win that little battle that you chose to fight. And you're going to have to keep doing it. Right? With AI and all these different little innovations and changes that come up, you're going to have to keep doing these things. So it all depends.
I have one more question before we wrap. How much per month should you be putting aside for your SEO? So I know sometimes we have clients who have smaller budgets. I don't know, they can do $1,000 a month. Is that a good enough number, or do you really need to be at $5,000, $10,000 a month? And this is a long-term game, so you need to have that money for at least 6 to 9 months.
So here's how I would answer that, and it's a small little tip in it. If you choose your battle wisely, then your SEO in today's kind of landscape, it can start paying off from day one. Let's take our world as an example. Say I start to focus on SEO and I say, you know what, my battles are technicalities on the site itself, so on-site SEO and whatnot, and all that whole thing. And then I'm going to focus on Clutch and LinkedIn because that's my world. LinkedIn might take a sec, but as long as you're super active and kind of feeding the beast, it'll shake your hand and give back. With Clutch, that's going to work in your favor. You're going to get really, really solid traffic from day one because your profile is getting pushed. Unlike, say, maybe Yelp, that's a bit more general traffic where people are looking for random services from a plumber all the way to whatever the fuck, a haircutter, anything, right? But if you choose your battles wisely, you can have some logs in the fire that are actually kind of evergreen and helping you feed your beast along the way. So while you can focus on some SEO fights that you chose for yourself, say LinkedIn, your Clutch profile is already actually feeding you really PPC traffic, if you will, from day one, right? Maybe you're not seeing the pay-per-click kind of play out in the way that you would see it on Google's platform or Meta or whatever other platform allows you to do that. But that's the concept. You're paying them for impressions, and the impressions that Clutch will give you, and I'm saying Clutch, again, it can be Angie's List, depending on your niche, find your directory, G2 if you're SaaS, Capterra, find where you can go, get listed, work on that profile and make it look super fucking good, drop some dough on it, have it stay consistent, and that traffic that's gonna come your way is gonna be super strategic, because who goes to G2? People that are comparing software. Their state of mind is really warm, as opposed to going to a nonprofit and building yourself out and going to Yelp. And you know what I mean? Like, the traffic is really hot. If we're talking about top of funnel, lower funnel, this is as hot as it gets. To get traffic from Clutch, where people are literally comparing web design agencies, and to have somebody just click all of a sudden and land on my website, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Now, whether that converts or not, that's a whole different ballgame. But to get the traffic to land on my site, we could do that. And to get that really, really hot traffic, a directory can offer that. And so if you play SEO right, you can actually, in today's landscape, it is what it is. It takes money to make money, unfortunately. Back in the day, you could be a really good blogger, but you can be, creative and whatever with your words and the way that you articulate things with your writing. And, you could explode on Medium or whatever blog you have on WordPress. Nowadays, it's pay to play, even organically. And if you do it right, you can have one of these directories already flooding your website with really, really robust traffic that converts, right? Who goes to Angie's List? People that are debating about contractors. Who goes to, you could do this like nonstop. SEO, go to UpCity. Like, there's so many different platforms. Just make sure to choose yours wisely and keep going with it. And also give it the time of day that it deserves. This is not to say that after you listen to this, you go to Clutch and it's one and done. No. You got to rub their back. Like, you got to play it right. When they're asking you for a Zoom call, I know it sucks. Get on it. Get on it. Learn who your rep is and make sure that rep likes you. Because if they don't, I don't know what buttons they're pressing, right? If it's Yelp, I don't know what buttons they're pressing, but that shit gets pressed. We know that for a fact. And if you don't believe me, go back to forums, directories, where all these discussions are happening, and you will see for a fact every single platform is completely monetized with money. So if you are paying, make sure to choose your platform wisely. And if you're doing SEO, don't go all over the place. Get to know your rep, whatever platform you chose, rub their back, make sure that you're giving the money that you need to give. Do it slowly. It doesn't mean that you need to just go and, and the traffic will flow. And then once traffic flows, then you're, playing a different ball game. I mean, you literally live in a day and age where if you decide today that you are opening a haircuttery in Maryland, okay, you can literally have really solid traffic today for your haircuttery website that went live this morning. That's as good as it gets. And you can have it done where SEO is working in your favor alongside of paid advertising, really. That's what it comes down to, because they start scratching each other's back, right? Because a backlink from BBB or a backlink from Yelp or a backlink from Clutch or all these different places, they're fucking solid. When you get a solid backlink from Clutch, your DR goes up. It goes up. So get those profiles all taken care of and then focus on just one or two. And if it's a haircuttery or whatever it is, really hot traffic will start flowing your way from day one. And then just figure out, why is it not converting? What's going on? Do we need to do this? Do we need to do, there's a whole thing there. So that's how it goes.
This has been awesome. I've learned a lot.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad this wasn't I've listened to other podcasts about SEO and they're just like, let's talk about keywords.
We're not there anymore.
Yeah, this episode is going to be called SEO, Reddit, and AI.
Listen, nowadays, Reddit. Yeah. Nowadays, anybody can open, go pay a subscription to Ahrefs or whatever it is, and just see low hanging fruit with, less competition, with low competition and whatever it is, and kind of just find some opportunities there and just it. Anybody can do that.
Yeah.
A 10-year-old sitting in whatever can just do that. You got to get a lot more creative and know what you're doing nowadays to really do it right.
Yeah, which is probably why I don't dabble in half the social media like TikTok. I'm like, that's for the kids.
Yep.
Do what you're good at.
If you look at me, social media for a little bit, I kind of got sucked into because it's addicting, and you kind of get into this thing where you're like, oh, I'm getting likes, I'm getting this, I'm getting that. It's helping, but is it really? Yep. And is that time that it's requiring you, again, that LinkedIn example, to manage so much content that literally dies after 48 hours?
Yeah.
Is your time being handled properly? Or maybe that time can be to just kind of get to know your rep on Yelp or Angie's List or Clutch or whatever whatever it is. And also Reddit or, find some other opportunities. So it can go a long way if you do it right. And again, like to get on Ahrefs or Whitespark or BrightLocal or all these little software, like anybody can do that now.
Yeah.
You got to really get creative and do it right.
Yeah.
Well, this was a really good chat, and I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, LinkedIn, for connecting us. Not sure how it happened, but it did.
And we got to do it again. It was fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. That's a wrap. I'm hungry.
As we conclude another episode of the Design Imposter podcast, remember, self-doubt may be a universal experience, but it should never define your worth or potential.
Embrace the power of your creativity, trust in your abilities, and continue creating fearlessly. You belong in this space, and your contributions are invaluable to your community and those around you.
Thank you for being a part of the Design Imposter community, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and leave a review to help other imposters find us.
Until our next episode, keep those headphones ready.